Hello, hello, hello. We have got an absolute beltor for you today. You like that ad?
What was that?
Beltor.
Turned into an American robot for a second.
Yeah. Excited about today's podcast, mate?
Oh, absolute banger.
If you are into podcasts, whether that's listening to them or if you've got ideas to set them up, today's guest is one that's going to give you some stinking value on what to do with it. There was loads of takeaways from it. Actually, what was really good about it is that we've just harvested loads of information for our own podcast to then go and implement. It was that good. Definitely worth a listen. It's sit back, get your cup of tea, get your notepad, and listen how to create and execute a podcast.
There is still massive opportunity in podcasting, massive, huge opportunities. Right. When it comes to the big niches like marketing or entrepreneurship or finance, those ones are taken. But in the niches, there's still massive opportunity.
You're now focusing on the fact that you are an agency for podcasts, not an agency like full digital, not a creative agency, not content. We are one part of what would be a really big agency, but we are one part of it, and we're going to own that space. It's everything's always led back to this podcast that you started.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
I see it as the best free consultancy ever because I just asked these people things that I want to know in my business. Oh, so I've got this friend, and he's got this hiring challenge. Like, what would you do?
Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of the 0121, the podcast all about entrepreneurship, growth and content creation in the beautiful land of Birmingham. I am Lee Wilcox, co-founder and CEO of Electric House.
And I am Adam Barry. I keep forgetting what my title is. It changes that often. But as you're listening to this, my title is Chief Content Officer at Electric House, also co-founder.
And today, I'm really excited today, but also very pressured. We've just been having some preamble, and our guest has joked that he's already judging our performance. We have today a podcast guru, extraordinaire, expert, however you want to pin him. Built a business all around this medium, has interviewed some amazing people, and is continuing to grow this business at a rapid rate. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest, Nathan Anibaba. And what I really want to know, mate, is what you do, who you are, and what the business is. Go.
Great question. Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it. So what do? We help agencies and brands create world-class B2B podcasts to help them grow their brand, sell more products and services, get their message out there, talk to their internal people about the things that they're doing. Podcasting is just a great way of building your brand, communicating your vision, generating leads, and winning more new business, which is what we're all here to do.
I couldn't agree with that more. So how did it start? What talk us through that? What's the
good question. Origin story. So it started as a way of me trying to get leads for my consulting business, because my background is I did help agencies win new business. So my background is sales. So I would consult for a few different agencies at a time, and helping them pull together new business strategies to help them win new clients. And I thought one day, wouldn't it be great if I could, how do I get in front of more agency owners, like especially large agencies that I want to win as clients? Maybe I should set up a podcast. And if I set up a podcast, I can invite them on the show and then talk to them about what they do and their careers and their journey. And then somehow that might turn into business. It was like a very loose kind of strategy, but it was like, right, maybe I can use the podcast as a way of building a relationship with people that I might one day turn into work. So I had no idea what I was doing. and I set up a really basic, terrible podcast. And when I started reaching out to people in the beginning, like everyone said, like so many agencies said, no, like, who are you? What is this about? No, I'm not going to be on your pod. I'm going to be the first one, because getting the first one is the hardest one, right? So like, how do you get the first one? And like, you know, I went out to some really big names at first, like Ogilvy and some of the biggest agencies in the world. And they were just, either I didn't get any replies or people just like, no. So I was like, how do I get the first one? And the first one was Kingpin Communications, a really big B2B agency, tech agency with some massive clients. And initially my idea was, right, let me start low. Let me start low. Let me start with the head of business development or someone in sales. I can have a sales conversation, because that's what I know. I know sales. I didn't know at the time anything to do with culture or hiring or agency processes or how agencies sort of operate their businesses. So initially I reached out to this person called James in Kingpin Communications. He was the head of sales. And he said no to me. And then I emailed him again. He said no again. And I was like, how do I get a hold of this guy? And one day I just called the agency and I said, hi, can I speak to James? And James was on the line. I think James picked up and I said, hey, James, I've emailed you a number of times. I've called you. I've got this podcast. I really want you to be on the show. And he said, yes. Great. Wonderful. So then I realized, actually, this isn't James, the head of new business. This is James, the CEO of the company. So it was like bonus, even better. So we recorded the show, and I was so nervous. It was a terrible interview. Like, don't go back and listen to that, because it's like the worst thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, I'll totally want to know.
really bad, horrible interview. And but we did it. And then I had something to show other agencies, this is what it sounds like. This is what we can do. And it was a really big name. A lot of other agencies had heard of Kingpin Communications. So it just started the ball rolling, and then we haven't looked back since. I mean, now we've done 116 interviews so far. We've interviewed some of the biggest agencies in the world. I mean, we've got the CEO of Havas coming on next week. And then we've interviewed lots of people in Ogilvy, and, we've just been really blessed with the caliber of people that we've had on the show. And more importantly, just the interesting conversations that we've had. Like, I see it as the best free consultancy ever, because I just ask these people things that I want to know in my business. Oh, so I've got this friend, and he's got this hiring challenge. Like, what would you do? So it's just the best free consultancy ever. So I've learned so much in the last 18 months, and built some great relationships, and, as you say, built a business off the back of it as well. So yeah, it's changed a little bit from the beginning.
It's a really interesting story. I'm a bit conscious now of asking questions that don't make it look like I'm trying to get free consultancy from you. Honestly,
you're not going to get anything good from me.
my genuine first question. Well, I've got a couple of questions actually. So, what year did you start doing podcasts?
Back end of 2019.
2019.
So, yeah, December 2019.
Is that a lot of things that I hear from people now, and when we talk to clients, is, oh wow, the market's really saturated now, and everyone's got a podcast, and they're quite negative about it. What would you say to people like that? So this is definitely one of those questions that I just mentioned.
There is still massive opportunity in podcasting, massive, huge opportunities. Right. When it comes to the big niches like marketing or entrepreneurship or finance, those ones are taken. Tim Ferriss, Guy Raz, I don't know. They've all taken them, and they've got audiences, they're established. Don't try and compete with Tim Ferriss. You're not going to do it. But in the niches, there's still massive opportunity. So what I mean is that, I don't know, it's like the internet, right? When the internet first started, now because of the internet, you can, if anyone that is into button making, the French patisserie, and you are, I don't know, a particular sort of sub segment that's all interested in a particular kind of French patisserie baking, then you can find the other 15 people in the world that are interested in that. So I would say go niche. The niches haven't been taken yet. and then use that as the foundation to build your audience. And, you know, as Kevin Kelly says, like, you don't need millions and millions of people. You need 1,000 true fans. So, and 1,000 true fans can help you build any sort of business that you want. So you just need to be really appealing to a small number of highly engaged people. And there's still a lot of opportunity in podcasting. Don't let anyone tell you any different.
I'll definitely be telling that to our clients when they knock my creative podcast ideas back.
Yeah, no, I think that's what you need to say. You know, I think it's very similar to the early days of blogging. You know, if you think back then, there were a handful of people that everyone had a blog, everyone created a blog, but you know, as blogging progressed, you were still able to create or build large audiences based on really unique, individualized, like personalized little markets. And especially as well, I would also say, I would take it a step further. It's all about, I mean, in marketing, it's all about differentiation, right? It's like you can't go up against Tim Ferriss because he's taken the entrepreneurship niche and he's owned that. But then entrepreneurship, maybe it's like Black entrepreneurship in Zambia, let's say, for instance, or like, as we said before, patisserie baking for entrepreneurs in French patisserie baking. Like, there's so many interesting places that you can go as long as you're creative and you use your the principles of marketing, which is like, how do you differentiate, right?
Yeah, like, you know, the 012 series podcast, you know, it's niche. It's specific.
It's niche.
It's, you know, and this is the thing. What do we know about and what we're excited about? We're excited about entrepreneurship and social media and content creation. And actually, just by localizing that, you instantly then go, okay, we know the target audience. We know that once we know the area in which we're fishing in order to try and get guests and get value. And quite quickly you go, oh, this is so much easier to plan, execute than it was by just being, oh, we're just a podcast.
We're another podcast.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you know what? It gives you a beachhead, because once you get really good, once you start owning the 0121 market or Birmingham, you start practicing and you start getting good at podcasting in general, because that's a skill. Like, it took me like 50 or 70 podcasts to get comfortable and start relaxing and started feeling like, okay, I'm good at this. So by going niche, it gives you time to practice, because no one is really, in the beginning, at least for me, no one's listening apart from my mom and my sister.
That's it, isn't it?
Like, that's it. So you need reps. You need to do it a lot of time till you get comfortable. And then as the audience grows, as they realize actually you're not going away and you're still there, people will start, as long as the content is good, they'll start sharing it. I mean, we haven't put any paid behind Agency Dealmasters, and it's grown through word of mouth, like people telling other people, hey, you should listen to this. It's really good. And then me kind of jabbing them as well for, you know, sharing it. But like, put great content out there, be consistent. That's the other thing, because there are too many podcasts that start up, you know, 5-10 episodes in, they realize it's really hard and they get really busy and they stop. I think the trick is with it is be consistent, get great guests, ask good questions, and then get out of the way, and then it'll take care of itself.
Yeah, I love it. Really, really good advice. And so something for value then, right? For people listening, for like my mom and Ad's brother, and, you know, like just a few that are listening. But how do you monetize Agency Dealmasters? Because you know, I think a lot of people who are listening will be like, okay, so this guy had an idea for a podcast, and now it's a fully fledged business. He's employing people. Talk us through that. How has that happened, and what does that look like?
Well, it wasn't easy. There are lots of different models out there to monetize. I mean, instantly you're thinking of ads straight away, but then advertisers are only going to advertise if you have a large audience and they're an engaged audience and you're consistent. And that wasn't really an option for us in the early days anyway, because we were still kind of finding our feet. Initially, the idea was, and it's changed multiple times. Initially, the idea was, hey, we're going to bring print back, right? So our idea was, we wanted to have and I say it now, it sounds ridiculous, but we wanted to have a copy of our Agency Dealmasters magazine on every desk of every agency owner in the world, right? We had some really big plans, and the podcast was going to be a vehicle for doing that. So we created this really glossy, high value magazine from interviews that we'd had, people that we interviewed on the show. We repurposed that into a magazine. We added original content in it as well from third-party journalists, and we created a really good, in my opinion, product. The problem was that the market just didn't want it. And that's the thing that I learned. It's just we sold a few issues, and some people did subscribe to it, but nowhere near what we were expecting. And by the way, what goes into making a monthly print publication, there's a lot of work that goes into it, which I had no idea about in the beginning. And kind of stressed me out. It made me broke. It was a problem. And I think after about 6 months of trying to make it work, I realized after spending thousands of pounds on this thing that it just wasn't, the market just wasn't interested in it. And it's sad because you have to then kill your baby. It's like, this was going to be the thing. And, there's a reason, Nathan, that print isn't really in circulation these days. I should have gotten that message from the mainstream newspapers, but I thought I had different plans. But what I realized was that the magazine subscriptions were going like this, and the interest in the magazines was going like this, but actually the interest in the podcast was going like this. So I said, right, let's double down on the podcast. Clearly the podcast is what people want. It's what they like. It's what they enjoy. But then, as you say, how do you then monetize it? And so off the back of that, we started running live events for agencies where we get agencies together in a room and talk about how they build and professionalize their agencies, and we charged for those events. We ran courses where we would get inspirational sort of agency leaders that have got a huge profile to come together to create content for agencies that they could buy and subscribe to, and all those things worked really, really well. But while this was happening, I was getting calls and emails from agencies every now and again saying, hey, we want to set up a podcast. How do you do it again? And can you come and consult for a couple of days? Because we want to create a podcast. And we know that you've done one. And so every month or every couple of months, I would get an email from an agency, and I would bat it off. Oh, I'm not interested in that. I'm doing this magazine that's going to take over the world. Why are you bothering me with podcasting inquiries? Go and find a podcast company to do that for you, right? So while I was thinking about this thing over here, the market was telling me, hey, we want podcasts and we're willing to pay for it. So actually, towards the back end of last year, we actually said, why don't we just double down and focus on creating shows for agencies and brands? There's clearly demand out there. There's clearly a lot of opportunity that hasn't been exploited yet, as we've just said, because there are opportunities in the niches. And people are asking for it. And when the market is giving you those kinds of clear signs, you're foolish not to kind of listen to it. So I had to kill the baby, kill the magazine, get rid of it, double down on what the market was asking for. And, we haven't looked back since. And that's where our revenue is coming from now. Oh, and in addition, we've also got sponsors that are sponsoring the show as well, because we've doubled down on the podcast and focused on making it a really good show.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, isn't it? On the basis and the irony of the fact that you talk to the fact of this is what new anyone who wants to start a podcast should look for, the niche, and they should look for that thing that is going to differentiate them. And then actually your business model has been exactly that. You ended up folding into the thing that made you niche. So, the concept of going, I'm going to sell X amount of magazines, was broad. But then actually the concept of we're going to actually this medium that's growing, the podcast, we're just going to focus on that. And now you're now focusing on the fact that you are an agency for podcasts, not an agency full digital, not a creative agency, not a content. We are one part of what would be a really big agency, but we are one part of it, and we're going to own that space. It's everything's really everything's always led back to this podcast that you started.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
It has.
You know,
it's weird.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know what the really weird thing is, as you was telling that story, it's very similar to how we started ours.
I was just about to say
Go
that.
on.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you know about this, but we set out. I mean, we own like, a pretty decent social media publishing group in the UK now, but we set out to launch a recruitment app in construction.
Wow.
So like a million miles away from where we are now. And the reason we created our Facebook page was because we wanted somewhere to market this construction app to. And at that time, it was like free advertising. Mark Zuckerberg hadn't turned the button down. Everyone's getting like 100% reach. So we created this Facebook page. Everyone's coming to us going, yeah, forget the recruitment thing. I don't want to talk about that. But what about this Facebook page? You're like, oh, no. That's just something we've set up to market our amazing app to. And then after a while, we were like, yeah, forget the app. It's not working. We need to go down this route. So it's very similar to what we're doing.
Yeah. And that's all about, like, you wouldn't have known that if you just didn't start. So like part of the thing with entrepreneurship is just like starting, doing it, taking the risk, and let the market tell you. Because if you don't show up, the market wouldn't have said. But also you have to be humble enough to listen to what the market is telling you as well. Because you could have still plowed on saying, no, we're going to focus on this recruitment thing and that's what we're going to do. But actually you were humble enough to say, you know what, it's not working and let's do something a little bit different. But it comes from experimentation. Like who's the guy that founded Instagram? That's exactly their story as well, right? It's, the guy, Kevin Systrom, his whole thing in the beginning was they wanted to make, what was it? Was it a photo sharing? It was a photo sharing app, but it was very much like Flickr. It was like another kind of Flickr. And there were tons of them on the market at the time, and they just weren't getting any kind of traction. I think what they started doing was saying, all right, well, people really like when we add these kind of filters. Like they added this feature where you could add different filters to a photo, and then that started to take off. And so while they were like, oh, let's try and make this Flickr kind of competitor, there was other part of their business or their kind of, tool that people were loving and sharing. And they were like, oh, why don't we just like focus more on that? Because the data is telling us people like this kind of filtering thing. And then they focused on that, made it amazing. That's what differentiated them. And now Instagram, you know what I mean?
You spoke about Tim Ferriss earlier, and I was listening to he released recently an interview with Mark Randolph, who's the founder of Netflix. Great story. Yeah, anyone listening, and you guys, both of you, should go listen to it because it's just a fascinating story. But again, it's that whole thing, right? That all they were trying to do was just start something. So they actually started with just trying to post DVDs to people. Like that was the model. They wanted to try and turn it into subscription, but realized they probably couldn't. And they spent 18 months trying to flog an idea that a DVD could be posted through a door, a letterbox, and everyone kept saying it's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. And it didn't, and he openly says, like, we just ignored everyone for 18 months and then realized that, oh yeah, shit, we were wrong. And then actually once they turned that into a subscription service and turned it into something where they were allowing people to not have late fees and just send it back when you want it, ultimately getting the customer to store this DVD for them until they didn't want to use it anymore. It became this completely different model. And he really refers to the fact of like, they came up with the idea and they were driving somewhere, the two of them, him and Reid Hoffman, and they came up with the idea and they immediately turned the car round and went and bought a DVD and put it in the post that day to Mark's house. So, and then the next day it arrived and they were like, okay, this can work. So his point was, you've got to you've just got to go and do it. Like you can strategize, you can surmise, you can work out what the market wants. But if you don't push the market and ask it the question, it won't tell you, it's really, really interesting. Yeah. So, one of the things that I wanted to pick your brain on was, and absolutely harvesting the value and doing exactly what you do with your podcast is, what are the qualities of a great podcast?
Good question. I guess it depends on the market that you're serving. But for me, it's the things that I said earlier. It's getting really good guests, asking really good questions, and then letting the guests be the star of the show. I think I listen to too many podcasts where the host wants to be the star, and I think for certain podcasts that can be the right thing. But I think if you want to attract an audience, the audience wants to hear from the guests. And especially in my case, so like if talking about Agency Dealmasters, I know nothing, I knew nothing about, I know a little bit more now because like 115 people have told me how to run agency businesses. But at the beginning, I knew nothing about how to run an agency business. But I tried to get the best guests that I could find, the biggest guests that I could find, get them on the show because they bring the audience. They already have a network, they're established. Get them on the show, ask them the kind of questions that they don't normally get asked or people want to really know the answers to, and then let them do their thing, and let the guests build it for you. Obviously, in addition to that, you need high, good audio quality and production, and aside, in addition to that, just on that thing, I think you also need to make it a show. I think, there are, as you said, there are a lot of podcasts out there. And I think the thing that separates the good ones from the really, really good ones is that the ones that are really, really good turn it into education, but also fun and entertainment at the same time. If you can have a mix of those three, yes, I'm learning from this podcast when I'm listening to it, but I'm also being entertained and I'm having a little bit of fun as well. Like that is the magical, that's the magic dust there.
We've got to take some of these points away, Lee. I think we're quite good at facilitating people, though. I think we're really good at going, we found an amazing guest, we're just going to let them talk. And that does work. But just wanted to touch on the tech that you mentioned, the tech there. So for any people who have no experience in podcasts, are thinking about doing the very first podcast, how much is it going to cost them? Can they do it on a budget? Now, obviously, there's going to be low end, high end, but what does it really cost to get started on a podcast?
Laptop, internet connection, and an audio input. Like that's it. To be honest, you don't need a studio. You don't even need a really expensive mic. I mean, we were discussing it with Chris, our audio guy here today. Like we were just saying, do people need to invest in their own studio in order to produce like really high production quality audio? And you really don't. Like you can record it from your bedroom, but just make sure that you're putting like a towel over your head or something like that. Because when your voice bounces off solid walls, hopefully not like we're in a room that we're in at the moment, but like if it bounces off chairs or desks or solid walls, then it bounces back in and your mic picks that up, and then that kind of distorts the sound. So you want soft furnishings around you as much as possible, like pillows and cushions. And I can see that you got lots of cushions in the background there, Adam. I can see that. So you just want to kind of absorb that sound, as much of that reverb as possible. But you don't even need a microphone. As long as you've got soft furnishings around you, any good laptop can record high quality audio. I mean, there are lots of great tools out there now to record your voice, host it in the cloud, Libsyn or Captivate. And there's lots of amazing tools out there. Zencaster records really high quality audio. And then they also increasingly, all these hosting providers allow you to syndicate your podcast to all the hosts, Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify. It's never been easier. They're making it even easier to do that. So I think the only thing that you really need is that creativity and like focusing on that niche and being consistent.
Solid advice there.
Great advice.
There's nothing stopping anyone, is there really? I think, like you say there, there's never been a better time to get involved. I think there's some value there. I think the one thing that does scare people is instantly they go, oh God, I don't want to compete with people who are already well established. And then they'll probably tell themselves the excuse of, oh, I can't afford to get all the tech for it. But really, like you say, they just need a really good idea. As long as you're going to be consistent, get on the laptop and get it done.
Get your reps in. As I said, the first 75 episodes were shit. Like, well, no, that's exaggeration. They weren't shit. But I wasn't myself. I was tense. I wasn't relaxed. I'm my own worst critic anyway. So people listening to it now will be like, what are you talking about? It was fine. But like, when you could do better. And for me, I didn't start enjoying it and really relaxing until like 3 weeks ago or whatever it was, like recently. And I think like there's something to be said for just getting your reps in and just doing it over and over again. And then especially when no one's listening, it doesn't really matter. Like you've got 3 or 4, regular listeners, it doesn't matter. Just like do it, get your reps in and become good. And then when it becomes good, then people will start sharing it.
Yeah, I think I'll find that at the minute. I mean, Lee, you've done a podcast before anyway, didn't you? You've done How's Your Week Been? That was
which was really interesting with Nathan when you were talking about the idea around Agency Dealmasters, because that was exactly the purpose of How's Your Week Been. It was just to get really good guests in the industry so that I could chat to them, know them, build a network, and then try and win some work with whatever brand or agency they were part of. Like that was the gig on it,
That's it. By the way, that is so underexploited in B2B marketing for businesses that are trying to sell to other businesses. Having a show and then inviting prospective guests on the show and building a relationship, like there aren't many businesses that are doing that. And that is a huge missed opportunity, because it's just the access that I've been able to get to some amazing, I never would have how would I have gotten the second in command of Virgin Money on our podcast, like the COO of Virgin Money? It's like LinkedIn, email. What would I have done? But as soon as you create a podcast and invite him on the show and then get him to talk about what he wants to talk about to the world, then off the back of that, you build a relationship, and then God knows what can happen off the back of it. So
yeah, it's a complete switch in value exchange, isn't it? You're not asking for anything. You're just saying, I'll give you a platform to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And it's so much more powerful than hi, we think we should be doing some work with you. Yeah, so really good. Look, I want to move on to Birmingham, if possible, because it's where we are. It's what the podcast is about. It's what we're trying to celebrate. Have you got a Brummy business that you would love to do a podcast for? Who would be, who's on the list?
A Brummy business I'd like to do a podcast for. So, Sam March. By the way, I'm from, I may not have the accent, but born in Birmingham, moved around a lot, moved all over the country and like all over the world, and then come back. So my accent isn't there anymore.
You can hear it. I think you've got.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. I'm accepted then. Sam Marchant from Columba. You know Sam. I think we're in a group together.
Yeah.
They're in a very similar boat as we. I mean, similar sort of space. They talk to agencies all the time. They talk to brands, and they're doing an amazing thing with agency pitch processes. And really, I could just an amazing guy, amazing business as well. They're really disrupting that space because it needs disrupting. And when you just want someone to succeed really, really badly. And he deserves, and they deserve a lot of success. So I'd really like to do, and Sam would be great for a podcast as well, but he's just so shy and introverted, and he kind of gets in his own way. So I'm trying to get him over that hump.
He's on my list. He's on my list to get on because I think his business is great. And I totally get that one. Do you see when because you must meet a lot of entrepreneurs through what you're doing, and whether that be the term entrepreneur, I think is only used for people potentially who set up businesses, but I don't know whether I agree with that. I think there's people who step into roles and are absolutely entrepreneurial. but particularly in of Birmingham guests that you've met, or that, the entrepreneurs you've come across, do you see a common thread with people that you meet in the Birmingham area who are sort of like entrepreneurs or have that entrepreneurial trait?
A common thread with Birmingham entrepreneurs specifically?
Yeah.
I don't know whether I do specifically for Birmingham entrepreneurs. Do you mean something like, I don't know, it's an interesting one. I feel as though for Brummies in particular, they're always a little bit apologetic when it comes to Birmingham. They're almost like, yeah, I'm from Birmingham, but, and I think because we know the perception of Birmingham in the eyes of other people. So I guess we're always trying to combat that a little bit. And maybe that's leading to a little bit of like imposter syndrome, like, oh, we're not as good as London or other parts of the country. And, but I don't think we have anything to apologize for. And I think, for me, especially, I'm in Birmingham, and I've had lots of opportunities to move down south and move to London and all the rest of it. But I'm like, no, like I want to stay in Birmingham. I think it's a great city. And I think a lot of people that aren't from here or haven't been here, especially recently, sort of don't have an appreciation of like what Birmingham is or what it's become and what it's becoming. And I think it's got a lot of energy, a lot of young people, great history. There's so much to do in the city. Well, not in lockdown, like not right now, but I think it's really gonna be the future of one of the main. It's gonna be one of the main cities in the UK. I mean, you look at all the investment that's been pumped into Birmingham, billions over the last few years, and you see the way the city's changing, and you see the way that a lot of people in London and the South are relocating to Birmingham. I think it's really going to be, over the next 5 to 10 years, Birmingham's going to be really the place to be. But yeah, I think a lot of Birmingham entrepreneurs are a little bit kind of apologetic of being from Birmingham, which I think is sad.
Yeah, I get that though. And I think a lot of that comes down to Brummies that go to London and maybe want to live in London and spend time in London. Whereas I think, if there's anything good to come out of this pandemic, I think one of the things are that you don't have to be in London anymore. And I think people are going, do I want to spend all that money on accommodation? I'm never going to buy a house in the centre of London. I don't really need to travel to London every day. It can be done from anywhere now. And I think that's sort of, people are sort of going, okay, well, Birmingham's actually a really good place to be. I don't have to be in London anymore. But I've always championed Birmingham, even though I know, there are much better places, but I'll still go, nah, it's all about Birmingham, mate.
But then better's relative,
yeah.
One person's better is not another person's. I think it's what's right for you. And I think the thing for me with Birmingham is that it's a big city, but it feels like a small city. And it's a small city, but it also feels like a big city. If you know what I mean, like I can go to my gym. Like one of the things that I just love, like I can park out the front of my gym, and then get in my car and then drive home, and I'm home in 10 minutes. Right? In London, it's just not possible. Like I'm commuting for an hour and a half each way. That kind of thing just annoys the hell out of me. And I just love the fact that I've got the convenience of everything that I want from a big city, but still it's small enough for me to get to, I can be in the country. So I can be in the country in like 20 minutes in any direction. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I've asked that question before to another guest, right? And they were the theme that came out was, and it's not too dissimilar. The sort of like apologetic part, but it was actually around that we're not as like self-promoting as other cities. So I think Manchester's done a really good job of that. I think London has always done a good job of it. Whereas in Birmingham, we're a bit like we're doing great things, but like, yeah, we're doing great things. Like we've got our head down and we're doing it.
Just like, doing it.
Yeah, we're just doing it type thing. And I think it's an interesting, it's an interesting sort of observation on the whole apologetic. I've never really looked at that, but I've probably done it myself. I probably have, yeah, at some point.
I think that's why so many people from Birmingham change their accents. I've got so many friends who've been to uni and then they move away, and then when they come back, they just talk. I'm like, wow, where did that voice come from? Honestly,
it's not just Birmingham. I think it's the north as well. I think it's many other parts of the UK. I think I think there's definitely this regional thing, and I'm seeing it when I speak to agencies, right? That the agencies from the north and the Midlands that pitch against London agencies, sometimes they feel like, oh, we're not good enough, or can we win that against that agency? They're from London, they're cooler, they're more. And it's like, no, actually, there's amazing talent all over the country, and like creativity isn't relegated to like the M25 corridor, you know what I mean? And like Shoreditch. Creativity is everywhere. And we shouldn't, we need to be a little bit more, just confident and not as apologetic for where we are and where we come from. I think that's ridiculous.
Like Ad says, I think the scales are balancing there, and I think that is due to remote working, access to talent, whatever you want to call it. But the accessibility now is, I think it's removing this regionalized position of media and creativity in agency land. Agency land is always like, you just refer to it then, it's sort of like it is inside the M25. That's where people think of when they think of media agencies. But it's changing, and it's only gonna change even more to sort of like balance that out and almost remove location as a reason to work with someone. I think. Which is great news for everyone outside of the M25.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. I think it's starting to change in the UK, but I think outside of the UK, the perception is still from clients that are probably coming into the UK is probably still, oh, let's get a London agency. London is where, and that needs to change, I think. But
yeah, definitely. I want to jump into the quickfire, Nathan. We're going to end with some quickfire questions, and then I also want to give you a little bit of an opportunity to just pitch what you're doing at Agency Dealmasters as well. So, Ad, do you want to jump in with the quickfire questions?
Yeah. Do you want to do one each, Lee?
Yeah, go on then. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Are these quickfire questions? Because we've done some last week, and one of them wasn't a quickfire question. It was one something to really think about. But
I think they are. Yeah.
Okay. Favorite podcast to watch?
Drift.
I have to make a note of that. I've not heard of that one.
No, neither have I. What is Drift?
It's that chat box. Chat, the chat bot thing that you can.
Oh, it's the video one, isn't it?
Is it video chat bot? Have they integrated video as well? So it's David Cancel. They've got a podcast. They've got an audio podcast, and they record it. David Cancel and the chief marketing officer, although I think he's left now. But they're just really great guys. Two of them, and they're just very funny. It's about business and entrepreneurship and growth and all the things we're talking about here, but just very down to earth. And they talk about hip hop and culture and books and Netflix and shows on TV. Yeah, just really, really good podcast.
Nice.
So the Drift podcast, they're really good.
Like it. Favorite podcast to listen to?
Probably at the moment, After Hours. So HBR, Harvard Business Review, do this podcast with the lecturers of like 3 lecturers at Harvard Business School, Young Mi Moon, Felix, I can't remember his surname, and another lecturer. But basically, there are these amazing lecturers, Harvard Business lecturers, and they talk about everything that's going on in the world right now, but from a commercial perspective, They talk about markets, they talk about fintech, they talk about new, cool, sexy businesses that are coming out, but from the perspective of educators. And I haven't really come across that before, because the business podcasts out there are generally like practitioners or founders or CEOs or, you know, people like me. But like hearing from the mouths of people that are teaching this stuff, I think is Oh, Bex posted something. Yeah, it's great podcasts. After Hours, check it out.
So HBR do another really good one, because I've just signed up to it about a month ago and started like you know, sort of going through stuff, and I've seen they've got like a really good list of podcasts, and the one that I started listening to was I just tried to get it up then. Coaching Real Leaders, and it's a real life coaching session that they do live.
Wow.
And it's really interesting because you obviously get some real like meat on the bone of someone's actual problem. They anonymize it, you know, but it's really, really good. I think HBR's great resource.
Great content. Yeah,
really good.
Okay.
Yeah, bro.
Okay. Thank you.
Next one, favorite person you've interviewed?
Oh no, you can't ask me to do that.
You've got to answer it, man.
No,
you've got to choose.
No.
Come on.
I would offend the other 115 people we've had on the show.
One of.
Yeah, top one.
You just done the Jedi mind trick on me or something. God, I mean, look, it's cliched, but like Rory Sutherland, man, like Rory is just an animal. Like I literally didn't, I just asked the first question and then he just went, he just talked, but he's brilliant. Like he's just he's fast. His mind thinks so quickly, and he is, he's full of great stories. He's got loads of amazing stories, and he's eccentric, and he's different and challenging, and his mind thinks in a really creative, unusual way. But it's like, so everything that he says you agree to, even though he's quite controversial and out there. But just a brilliant conversation with him, and like really nervous when I
so for those who don't know who Rory Sutherland is, so he's the guy, is he chairman or vice chairman now?
Yeah, vice chairman of Ogilvy, I think. But he also, he's also written a couple of books. He wrote a great book called Alchemy, basically about behavioral science in marketing, and how marketers should use behavioral science more. Brilliant book. Just a great thinker. He was formerly the creative director of Ogilvy as well, or just a really interesting guy. I can give a few more if you want, but like that's the top one.
Yeah, you did it. You see, you chose the top one. Who is your dream podcast guest then? Let's go either way.
Dream podcast guest. God, there's a list. Dead or alive? It's got to be alive.
Let's go alive.
Let's go alive. Okay, so for the podcast, probably Sir Martin Sorrell, but I need to build up to that, the CEO of WPP. For me, Michelle Obama, because I think she's like a whirlwind, and just so amazing and inspiring. I didn't always think that, actually. Also, Malcolm Gladwell. I love Malcolm Gladwell. Seth Godin. And Vladimir Putin. Should I put him in there? Why not? Wild card.
Proper, you're going through all these great names, and then flippantly it was like, Vlad? Should I chuck Vlad in?
Why not?
I'd only want you to get Vlad on if you were definitely going to, one, film it, and two, request that he has to do the whole podcast on his horse.
On his horse with his shirt on.
Without his top on. That would be great.
Final question. Okay. If you could only listen to one podcast for the rest of your life, what would it be?
These questions are tough. It's not fair. Like, that's a tough one. One podcast for the rest of my life. Okay, if it's that, then it will probably have to be Desert Island Discs, which is BBC show that's been running for like 100 years or something stupid like that. It's just, I only discovered it recently, but like they interview some amazing people, and they've, you know, I don't subscribe to it anymore actually because I've got too many podcasts in my thing. But yeah, like people from media and Hollywood and culture and business and everything all over the shop. So I think you get a little bit of everything. You get a little bit of arts, you get a little bit of business, you get a little bit of music, whatever. And I've actually been, you know, when you listen to a podcast, you know, when you have a perception of someone beforehand, and then you listen to a podcast where they go into their history and their story, and you're like, actually, I was a dick. I had no idea who this person was, and actually they're amazing. And I've changed my perception on people so many times from listening to Agency Dealmasters. Sorry, listening to Desert Island Discs. Yeah.
If you would imagine if you had said Agency Dealmasters for that question, you'd only listen to yourself.
No, that's like the worst thing you can say. It's so wacky. I can't say that. And to be honest, I don't listen to my own show. Like I still don't like the sound of my voice, and I don't like. There's so many times I'm so critical. So when I do listen back those odd times, I'm like, oh, why did I say that? Why did I ask that question? Why did I say it in that way? Why didn't I say this? I'm like, I beat myself up to the point where, like, you know, it's just like, this is shit. Like, let me just stop. Let me just go and get a job. And then we just go and, like, you know, do something.
I'm quitting. This is shit.
What's the point? What's the point? If you're going to do this, Nathan, like, I'm so critical of myself. So, yeah. I don't even, it surprises me that people listen to it. Like, it does. It surprises me because I'm like, really? I've got all these thousands of people that are downloading this show from all over the world. And I'm like, really? So that it's really humbling. But yeah, I'm my own worst like critic. Yeah.
So look, as promised, I wanted to just give the opportunity because I think it's the perfect medium to do so, and I think it offers a lot of value. But just to sort of plug the podcast as a service, you know, what's the benefit of having someone come in and deal with the operations, creative, and sort of delivery of a podcast?
Because you're busy running your business, right? So with the best of intentions people have of creating a podcast, especially agencies, right? And large clients, they have all these intentions. They go, right, we're going to do it. And then a client says, hey, we have this project. And like everyone in the agency stops what they're doing and works on this project. And when you stop getting busy and then you go back to the podcast again, but then you find you're inconsistent and you've missed a guest, and there's so much that goes into producing a regular show that you want to really focus on what you're good at, which is serving your clients. And you want to outsource everything else to people that are better than you at it. It's the reason why, you know, professional services exist, right? Yeah, I could take out my own tooth, but I'll probably get a dentist to do that because like it's probably better at it than me, or do my own taxes. So that's really, you know, that's the thing. And as I said, the main advantage, the main benefit is like lead. I mean, there are many benefits, but lead generation is number one, because you can get access to anybody in the world. I mean, Vladimir Putin, I'm not sure whether I can get him, but like you can get access to some pretty amazing people that it would have been really hard for you to get access to in any other way, and use that to build a relationship, not only with new clients, but with existing clients as well. Like people love being invited on a show to talk about themselves and talk about their businesses and what they're doing and their backgrounds. So give them the opportunity to do that, and they will thank you for it in the form of a relationship that's built. So yeah, if you haven't done one, if you're thinking about doing it, definitely do it.
Love it. And where can people find you, Nathan? If they want this podcast of a service, they need to go to Agency Dealmasters. So where are they hitting you up?
Go to agencydealmasters.com. New website is coming soon, hopefully next week or the week after. My developer keeps telling me. Or email me at nathan@agencydealmasters.com, and we'll pick it up from there.
Love it.
Amazing. I'll definitely be listening to this one back, because I only ever listen to the good guests.
God.
Wow, that's harsh.
Yeah,
that's harsh to me.
Which is awesome. In case
right.
Nathan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, mate. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Great to have a Birmingham business owner on who's doing great things in sort of our space and something that's a bit different as well. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of agents out there that sit in our sphere or sit as creative or whatever it might be, but I think you're onto something amazing. So yeah, good luck with the business. Look forward to seeing and hearing some of the podcasts you're behind very soon. So thanks very much.
Thank you. And listen, thank you for inviting me. I've really, really enjoyed it. And good luck to everything that you guys are doing as well at Electric House. I really love what you guys are doing. So you guys are an amazing success story for Birmingham. So yeah, keep on doing what you're doing.
Appreciate that, dude. Thanks very much. Cheers. Cheers, Nathan.
All right. Take care.
So that was episode 3. Too much information for me. I'm going to make notes after this, just so that I actually take some real value on what to do with our own podcast. So that was Nathan Anibaba, and he's the owner of Agency Dealmasters. Great episode with tons of value.
Yeah, completely agree. I think if you're either thinking of starting a podcast or you already have a podcast, you're going to have got some value out of that. Already, me and you are looking at each other thinking of how we're going to change our podcast off the back of it. So it must have been good.
Yeah, it's great when you get guests like that, where it's a double win in it. It's like it's a win for the listener and a win for us. So it's they're the best ones. As always, guys, please leave a review if you've got some value from that. And we're available on all podcasting platforms. But if you get them on the main ones, on the old Apple and Spotify, sling us some reviews in there, and jump over to the YouTube channel to watch. If that's how you consume your podcasts, I do a few. I watch a few. Listen to most, though, if I'm honest. So that's it for episode 3. Thanks very much for listening. Next week, Addison Clark. Really looking forward to that. Tune in and chuck some comments at us. I don't know what I'm even saying. It's a terrible outro. We've got to get some structure.
Addison Clark, just tune in.
Fucking, I'm broke, man. I'm broke. I've had a really, really stressful morning. I'm fucking. God, I'll tell you what, Jamie.
Was Kelly even laughing then?
He was laughing at me then as well. It was a hard podcast, that was, because she's banging around. The dog was barking. She started tapping his bowl, and halfway through, I ended up clicking at her just so that I didn't look away. How terrible was that? She just forgot. She's fucking roaming around, banging the doors, doing whatever she wants. Jamie, I totally want you to keep all of this in. This is the outro. Yeah. Don't get rid of any of this, nor for the audio version. Right, guys, we're going. Episode 3 is done. It's in the can. See you for episode 4. Laters, taters.
0121.